Viewers and listeners,
you can now watch Teleradio Bandido on our new YouTube channel, RJAM News.
Hit the subscribe button and like the video. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified when a new video gets uploaded. Don't miss out on our dynamite lineup.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZ, RJ, and RJ TV. My name is Eric LeGain, and I'm joined with Lolly Tolentino as we are here to talk about stories going on around the world, interesting things that our viewers are interested in talking about and questions that they have sent in. So we'll be reading those in a moment. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Listen to us on Sky Cable Channel 224 and on AM Radio 810 on your radio dial. Lolly Tolentino, how are you doing this week here in Manila during the MECQ? Are you surviving?
Definitely, I am surviving. Okay. And you know what? No matter what happened, Eric, we will survive.
Yes, I know. The Philippines always survives. Right? They survived. I would say they've survived worse, but I don't know if I can't think of anything that's been much worse than this, but things are, I think, do you believe that the MECQ will be dropped coming up very soon, the next week?
Well, in my opinion, maybe not yet, because, hospitals are still full, so we still need to bring down the cases. So MECQ, I think it helps.
Yeah, so in my opinion, no, they will not drop it. I think they're going to continue it on into May. I think this, the curfew and closing all the restaurants down. I think they're going to let that roll for a little while longer. It's just my thought. I hope not, but I think that's what's probably going to end up happening. So what do we have? I know we have a lot of questions this week, and some of them are very interesting. I read through some of them earlier. So what have you got going on this week?
All right. As always, we always have very interesting questions from our viewers.
We have the most interesting start viewers, yes,
with Susie of Parañaque. What is the impact on the conviction of Derek Chauvin on the George Floyd case death?
Yeah,
what do you think?
Of course, I knew this was going to come up. This is one of the biggest, probably the biggest story of the week. Isn't it interesting how we were not correct? I did not think he would get convicted of murder.
Really?
I thought that he would get convicted of something, but I didn't think it would be of murder. And this week, the police officer, in case you have been hiding under a rock, who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, was convicted of murder. It's actually second-degree murder, which I just could not believe that they were able to prove. And I think what happened in the case is it's called second-degree unintentional murder. So they had to look at his mindset. Was he in the mindset of, because how you can get somebody on second-degree murder is you are in the midst of committing a crime, and while committing that crime, somebody dies. And they can get you for, you didn't mean to kill somebody, but you were shooting at the policeman and you accidentally shot in through the window across the street and you kill somebody in the room. So you're in the midst of committing a crime. So what they had to prove was that he was in the midst of committing a crime and that he knew that he was. And I didn't think that they would be able to do that. But somehow the jury believed him and they got him on murder too.
Yeah. And not only that, because the video, it's a very clear and that's the evidence.
Yeah. If there was no video, he would be a free man. He'd still be on the police force now. He would still be on the police force. Yeah. And instead of like looking at 70 years in jail for all the things that he was charged with. So, but it's interesting that in watching the trial, they did not have to prove that policeman was the sole cause of death. They just had to prove that the force that he used was unreasonable. And this is it's very interesting about this case because there's so many different facets of murder too. There's so many different levels and different ways that you can convict somebody. So, for a law student, this was a very interesting case to watch. That the force that he was using to subdue this man was unlawful, and therefore his death is because of him. Now, if you remember the defense, I thought the defense had a pretty, because in these cases, the defense usually has the easiest thing to do because all they have to prove is, well, this guy resisted arrest and we had to restrain him and he died. And that's what happened. George Floyd was resisting arrest. But the thing was, he was handcuffed. So what they were saying was that he put his knee on his neck because they were worried that with all the drugs and everything that were in George Floyd's system, which is true, he had drugs in his system, that he was going to jump up and could cause harm to the bystanders who were standing around. And the jury did not buy it.
Yeah. And it is sad for. Well, you know what? It helps a lot also because otherwise, if he did not get convicted, you know what? We know that there's a lot of protests on the street. That's going to happen all over.
Yeah, and a lot of people criticize this case because of that. I was watching Fox, which I hardly ever watch, and they were saying that the reason that the jury convicted him was because they were scared of what was going to happen. And everybody was worried about what was going to happen if they didn't convict him, that there would be mayhem and they would burn down buildings and there would be looting and people would be killed. And so therefore they had to convict him of murder or, the whole United States would have fallen apart. All right. Okay. Maybe. I don't know. But, there's some other issues too that this congresswoman came out and said that if they don't convict him, then there's going to be trouble. And so basically they've set him up for an appeal. I mean, I'm sure he's going to appeal this decision. I'm surprised they got it in the first place, but and they got him on murder 3. So it's murder 2, murder 3, and involuntary manslaughter. Now, murder 3, in case you don't, there's so many different levels of murder. Murder 3 is like when you go into a grocery store and you stick a piece of dynamite in a watermelon to see what it looked like if it blows up, and the watermelon blows up and it kills somebody who happened to be walking by. So that's murder 3. They were able to prove that as well as manslaughter. So that what he was doing was not what he was trained to do. This is not what a police officer is supposed to do. That's why that testimony that we were talking about 2 weeks ago about where the guy came in and said, we don't train police officers to do this way. And what he was doing was not what police officers are supposed to do. And that was really a key element in this whole thing as to why they decided to go ahead and get him for murder 2, murder 3, and manslaughter. And he's looking at a max of 75 years.
Wow, my God! And how old is he now? Yeah, we'll see what happens later on.
He's not going to get 75 years because this is not like a bank robbery or something like this. This is a police officer who, in my opinion, was just an idiot. I don't think he intentionally meant to kill this man. He just was this idiot, and he was kind of a. They're saying, he was a big black man. There's a whole bunch of issues that are going on, but I suspect that he will probably get around 20 to 30 years. And then there's a possibility of parole. So I think that'll satisfy everybody. Because if they come in and they give him 7 years or 8 years, everybody's going to be angry. And then there's another reason for everybody to protest and to riot and whatever. So they're probably going to give him what I would assume would be somewhere in the 20s.
All right. I'm sure they're going to make an appeal later on, but just for peace of everybody.
They will.
Right.
I know I would.
Get convicted. All right, let's go to George of Pasay. What is the latest update on climate change summit? President Biden said the U.S. will cut emission in half by 2030. Is it doable?
Well, so Biden said this is the decisive decade in that speech for tackling climate change. He said this. it's the global leaders summit where everybody gets together and they talk about climate change and they all give big speeches. Anyway, he jumped up and said that he's going to cut carbon emissions by 50 to 52% by 2030, based on the 2005 levels. And everybody was like, really? And so how is he going to do something like that? You know, it's interesting. China and India, China's number one, obviously, in emissions. United States is number two and India is number three. China and India said nothing. I mean, they didn't make any commitments to do anything like Joe Biden did. So I think Joe Biden might be out on his own. He said that they have to stop the world from going up by 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, 1.5 degrees Celsius, if this room right now went up by 1.5 degrees Celsius, I think I would not know. Most people are not going to die if the world goes up by 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, it turns out that on a global warming scale, 1.5 is pretty high.
Really?
It can cause drought and famine and typhoons and fires, and there's all kinds of things that a tiny little increase in temperature can do. So I think that's kind of what they're getting at. They're saying, and Biden said, if we don't do this now, then in the next while we won't be able to do it. We'll have gone too far. You take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt, but there you go.
Yeah, I mean, why not? If you can do something right now, I mean, why not? Because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So, and this is for the future of, like they say, from, kids to your grandkids. So why not do something now if you can do something about this climate change? And I think they can do something.
Yeah, nobody's going to die. US. Nobody's going to die from the heat. We adapt to the heat. The Earth is not going to become like a scorch like Mercury, where it goes up to 200 degrees. We can't leave. That's not going to happen. But these tiny little increments of that the temperature goes up can change certain global aspects, which the world doesn't care. The world, the world's been doing this for millions of years. It's all for us. Greta Thunberg, remember her, the really mad little girl? Mm-hmm. So she came out and she spoke and she said, unlike my generation, we will not give up without a fight. How long do you honestly believe that people in power can get away with this? Like I said, she's really mad. She's still mad.
I think so.
But, yeah. So, but I understand where she's coming from. I think a lot of it, like I said, climate change, if the Earth goes up, 10 degrees Celsius, it's not going to kill anybody. However, it can cause a lot of problems, such as, the tide is going to change, and this whole issues about wildfires and typhoons are going to get bigger. I mean, they've already kind of proven this. So, everybody said, well, so what if it goes up just a little bit? Well, that may cause a lot of other problems. So, and one of the things in the question was, is this doable? And
is it?
Here's what I think about all this. If you can change the mindset of people, then it's doable. Before it was cool to be smoke. It was really cool. When I was young, it was really cool to have a cigarette. And now it's not so cool. That's because they changed the mindset of people. And in the United States, like last year, it wasn't cool to wear a mask. Nobody wore a mask because it wasn't cool. Now it's kind of cool to wear a mask. In fact, when people see you without a mask, they say, put a mask on. So, what if it became like that? What if, it was uncool to drive a gasoline car? You're driving a gasoline car? Well, you need to park your car way over there and walk in because we don't allow gasoline cars in our neighborhood. If that sort of thing happens, then I think it is possible that they can, change it by 50%. What if they change the laws in New York that you can't burn oil in your building? I mean, everybody would freak out at the beginning, but then, in a couple of years, everybody freaked out when they made smoking. You couldn't smoke in New York. So if they did it, everybody would freak out at first, but then everybody would kind of go, okay, you know what, that's okay. That's what we're going to do. So if you change the mindset of people, like we talked about last week, about if there's a piece of trash on the ground outside here in the Philippines, how long would it take for somebody to pick it up? If you change the mindset of people, then eventually we'll start picking up the trash.
Yeah, well, like you said, I agree with that. Change the mind of people, and I think we should have a good campaign on that. by just talking to your friends or family about that, and how we can contribute for the climate change. Just a very simple, way of contribution. If they say don't smoke, don't smoke. Very basic, very little things. That
I mean, you got people to wear masks and shields. I mean, they got everybody to wear a mask in the Philippines. So, I mean, all you have to do is just change the mindset of people. Here's what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And everybody will be mad in the beginning, but eventually they'll realize that it's a good idea.
Yeah, people will adjust. I'm sure about that. All right, let's go to May of Taytay. Why do you think there are more... Oh, this is interesting. I don't know. I think that you like this kind of question. Why do you think there are more breast reduction now in US and UK compared to before? From supersized to natural look.
Okay. Well, let me first off, what a fascinating question this is. I'm not an expert on breast reductions. However, I, like most men, are opposed to the idea of breast reductions because why would anybody want to make them smaller? I don't know. That's me. But, I sort of understand where they're coming from. But, women kind of want what they want. But I was looking at some statistics on this. And it is interesting, on cosmetic procedures. Now, it's hard to find statistics on this, but I looked back in 2016, 2017. Breast augmentation was up 3%, liposuction was up 5%, tummy tucks were up 3%, and breast reduction was up 11%.
Okay.
So
that was 2016, 2017.
Yeah. So
what about now?
Now the reason, I mean, it's a little tricky to get statistics on these kind of things, but the reason was that it has a positive effect on the positive effect of a breast reduction is both functional and aesthetic. So as opposed to a breast augmentation, which is mostly just aesthetics. But the interesting thing that I found, and this was an accident, that men's breast reductions are up 19% in the year 2020. Men? Yes.
Really?
So man boobs are not cool, according to a lot of guys. A lot of kids, that has become very popular for men. Now, of course, we can surmise what the reason is obviously for men. Like for man, if you have big chest, that probably is not what the look you're going for. I'm just thinking. But women also, I guess, I knew somebody who was pretty close to me that had one of these. And she was an athlete, and she was big in the top section, and she couldn't do a lot of stuff. And so she decided to do it. And it was hard. It's not like a breast augmentation. It's hard. It's a full surgery. They put you to sleep, and there's scars, and they have to remove part of it, and they have to put it back. So it's not a cakewalk. But I think now with technology and how they're able to do these things so much easier and better and with less pain now, I think a lot of women are starting to get it.
Okay. Well, you know what? I know some friends who have their, what do you call this? They made, during their time, they made it big. And now they want to reduce it. That's why I was so fascinated with the question, because now I can see that, and I question myself, why did they do that at the beginning? And now they want to reduce it because they said it's heavy. So they would rather a natural look than to have that big thing because it's all, at some point, it hurts their back. That's what they say. So for women who's planning to do breast augmentation, better think twice.
Yeah, well, that's a different thing. That's like, oh shoot, I should have done that. Let me go back and do it again. Now, I looked up what women said about this, about comments that they made after the surgery, and it's funny. Some women are happy with this, and some women are really not happy with what they did with the breast reduction. But I noticed that many of the happy ones are within the last 5 years, and the non-happy ones are all before 5 years. So I wonder what happened. I wonder what happened in that 5 years. And I think a lot of it has to do with the recovery stage. And that's what they, a lot of them said. They said, I wish, now that I realize what the recovery was, I wish I hadn't done it. Because the recovery takes a long time. and you can't breastfeed anymore, and there's other things, issues that come about, and they don't necessarily always get them to look right. They reduce them, but then one looks one way and one looks another way, and that's not what they wanted, so they have to go back and get another surgery, and then that doesn't work out, and before you know it, I think the one woman called it Frankenboobs that she has now. So. But yeah, I mean, I think as technology gets better, and so does microscopic surgeries, that you'll see probably a lot more of these things. Although it seems silly if you get them enlarged and then you get them reduced, and then you keep going back. I think people tend to do surgery too much.
Okay, the lesson here is that for women, just love what you have. Okay, you don't need augmentation, you don't need reduction, just whatever you just what God gave you, enjoy it.
Yes, and let all the men around you enjoy it as well. I'm sure I'm getting in trouble for that.
Okay, ladies, all right, let's go to the next question, because I just have the natural look, I don't have the oversized, supersized. Renato of Makati, question is, why Asian men hairlines are receding faster than ever before?
Wow, now this is not an obscure question, is it? Okay, let's take a look at this. All right, so because we answer every question, we answer any question that anybody gives here on the show. Historically speaking, white men in their 30s start to go bald, and by the time they're 40, they have a whole new hairline. Not so much with Asian men. Over a lifetime, white men lose their hair much more than Asian men do. And black men tend to shave their heads anyway, so they look cool anyway. So I don't know what this story is really with them, but because they're always shaving your head. All the black guys I know that are older, they've all shaved their heads. But in the last 10 years, things have been changing. And there is a new trend in Asian men. Some people call it an epidemic of baldness happening in Asian men. And why is that? And a lot of it has to do with lifestyle, stress, poor diet, lack of sleep, drinking, smoking. The new modern lifestyle in China, okay, I did all my research in China, is causing men to lose their hair early.
Okay. So now it's Asian man. Okay.
And you know what's up now is hair transplants in Asia. Hair transplants.
I know. I have a friend who had his transplant 20 years ago. He's my age, and he had a transplant. He's just vain.
Yeah, I mean, they have these transplants now where you can take hair from your chest and your legs and your butt and your neck and put it on your head.
Yeah, from your back, then put it right here.
You can have.
All right, man, you can do a lot.
You can have butt hair and put it on your head.
Yeah. All right, compliment you of the gig. Why do you think in India they are doing cremation in parking lot? Though it's not a surprise, they have 332,730 in one day. Worse in U.S. Hope this will not happen in the Philippines.
Wow. Okay. Now let's go from losing your hair to losing your life. India, if you've been keeping score, India had the highest number of cases in a single day ever. India is having a lot of problems, and with that many cases, you're going to have a lot of dead. And they did. They're having sometimes 300, 400 people are dying. And how do you deal with that? You put a crematorium in a parking lot and you set people on fire. And it just, it's hard to say, but I watched that video. And a lot of people, if they saw that video that they put out, the news video of what's going on in India, it is pretty hard to watch. And the problem they're having there is people are dying at home because the hospitals are completely full. And so they're dying at home. And then the people bring the bodies to the crematorium. And the crematorium is like, listen, we don't have the room. We can't take your dad or your grandfather or whatever. So come back in 2 days and, we'll see if we have room. And by the way, bring some wood, because we're out of wood. And I'm not kidding. They really, And so people have to take the bodies home and keep the body at home and then bring it back and see if there's some space. And the reason that this has gotten so much news is this video that came out, and it shows this giant parking lot, and in the parking lot they have body after body after body just laying next to each other, and some of them are on fire and some of them are not on fire. And the problem is that the crematoriums that they have there are all full. They can't burn them enough. In fact, this one crematorium, they said they melted the sides of the burner because they didn't let it give enough for time for it to cool. Because they were burning bodies for 20 hours straight, and eventually they melted off the hinges of the door. And this other one, the chimney collapsed because they were burning too much. They were burning too many people. And so this is what's happening in India. We hadn't heard so much about India, and now after this footage that was taken, and there's this part of the footage where this guy speaks, the guy who's burning the bodies, and he's talking about the children that he had to burn and the old people that are there with nobody around because they bring them and drop them off and they have to leave. The family has to leave. They can't hang around and watch it. And one of the problems they're having is they don't have enough wood.
Wow.
And so they're asking the families to bring wood. If you bring your, loved one who has passed away, bring wood so we can burn them.
My God, this is horrible. I mean, wow, I cannot even, look at the video. I mean, oh God, I mean, I don't know. And this is so sad.
They have 28%. 28% of the world's cases now. India is going through a second wave now. They went through their first wave, it went down, and now they're coming through their second wave. And it's the second wave has turned out to be way, way worse than the first. And that's what always happens in these things. And people are saying that the government is giving out counts, and the counts are wrong. They're really wrong. That there's so many people dying in rural areas, but in order for it to count, someone must certify it. But there's not enough people to certify the deaths, so people are just dying, and they're throwing bodies in these huge vats, like mass graves. They're putting a whole bunch of people in one hole and then covering it up, and doing another one. And they're showing the mass graves that they're digging, and they say, the guy is saying on the thing, look, we're out of space. In another couple of days, we're done. We're already to the edge, and then there's no more space. So where are we going to put them then? So India is not used to this, and they didn't have a plan for this. They didn't know that this was going to happen. And so now it's just a horrible scene there in India.
Yeah. And for this thing happening, of course, nobody's prepared to handle this. I mean, having over 300,000 cases a day, that's a lot. I mean, how can you handle that? And it's just like everywhere. And, the viewer says, hope this will not happen in the Philippines. I pray to God not. So we just have to,
Yeah, but the Philippines needs to watch. They need to watch India very carefully because, India and the Philippines are similar in a lot of ways, especially in rural areas. And what India did not expect, I think, in their second wave was that this would really hit the rural areas like it did. Now, before, of course, it was in New Delhi, it was in the big cities and everything, but now it has spread. And that's what a lot of people are worried about here in the Philippines is they don't want to match that because they don't want this to get into the rural areas. You're going to have the exact same problems.
Yeah. We're having problem already with crematorium here. So, I mean, and our cases is not as bad as India. So, I hope it will not. Okay. Let's just pray for that. Oh, let's go to Ging. Hang on. Okay, let's go to Ren of Santa Rosa. What's the deal with Flint, Michigan? It's a small town of 100,000, and yet it finds its way to the U.S. headlines for its problem that probably are not unique to them. What do you know about this?
Okay, I mean, let me just say real quick. Here again, I love the questions that come from our viewers. Flint, Michigan, for all of you that don't know it, it is now considered one of the worst places to live, where it used to be one of the best places to live. And, back in the early 1900s, General Motors started a car factory there. and it was a booming economy, and people were moving in, and lots of jobs, and General Motors ran 90% of the economy. I mean, most everybody worked for the car plant, and then General Motors left, and it left everybody. The town just imploded, and it just seems like ever since that happened, Flint has been the most unlucky place in the United States. They're one of the most dangerous places to be in the U.S. They have the worst water system in the U.S. And the reason they have the worst water system is it has lead poisoning in it. And it turns out that the sea salt on the roads that they put out has chloride in it, and the chloride goes down to the ground and it gets on the pipes, and it makes the pipes disintegrate, and lead gets into the water. And it's turned out to be like one of the biggest news stories in the U.S. Is how bad the water is there. And the urbanization of there, when they built that town, they did, all the black people came in, and they put them all in one concentrated place. And then everything stopped. All the car plants and everything left. And now crime is going through the roof. They have some of the worst homicide rates in the entire United States, this little town in the middle of nowhere. Education, skilled workers, transportation, everything is lacking there. There's over 20,000 unmaintained properties there now. Almost nobody that lives in Flint now lives in a house that they own. They rent it because the people that own the house is all left. And like I said, the city is out of money, and they have one of the highest murder rates in the U.S. And it's just one of these things where every time you turn around, Flint is in the news. They are the most unlucky city in the entire United States, without a doubt.
Really? So what is the mayor or governor doing for that particular place?
Yeah, they're always trying to turn it around. They're always trying to, we got a plan. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And so far, every time they seem to, take a step forward, they take 2 steps back. Like I said, it's the most unlucky place in the United States. This thing with the water has turned out to be a major issue because, it's one thing, don't drink, the water coming out of your sink. You know how when we were kids, we'd always drink the water coming out of the sink. It was no big deal. We drank out of the hose. But this place, not only should you not drink out of it because doesn't taste well or whatever, it's poison. Like the water coming out of your spigot is poison. So they're trying to figure, and and the problem was that, they lied about it, and they didn't say that it was, there's all, it's a huge story and travesty that happened there. So, like I said, if the reason that it's such an interesting story is because Flint was such a great city. It was such a great city before, and then it just turned into like the worst place.
Okay, Ren, what a question. I don't know this place. Thank God I've never been to that area. Okay, let's go to Ging of Mandaluyong. What will happen to the Philippines if this pandemic worsens? How is our economy look like now?
Well, that is the problem, isn't it? What if things get worse? This is where the plan that they have for the Philippines is going to go off the rails. That's where it's going off the rails right now. They had a plan to exit the pandemic. Here's what we're going to do. The economy is like this, and when the pandemic ends in 2021, then this is what we're going to do. We're going to go here. But the pandemic's not ending.
That's the problem.
And they've got all these catchy phrases, the we recover as one, that's the plan. And the expenditures program, Recharge PH. Doses of hope, with the private sector is going to bring in all these doses of the vaccine, but things are not going as planned. And that is one of the problems that I think they didn't foresee is what if things get worse? They've got these great plans to come out of the pandemic, but, the pandemic keeps changing. It keeps, messing up the plans. They keep having snags. I mean, the vaccine rollout had a snag, and the GDP, it shrank. What is it? 11.5%. Inflation's up 4%. 75% of the economy was shut down for a year, and it's going to take some intelligent people to figure out how to get that economy back, because you can't just turn the economy on again. It's got to come back. You can't get all these people back to work in a day. It's going to take some time. All these businesses closed. In the mall where I live, places have shut down. There are, places where they have plywood over the stores. One, every other one is closed. And, with the ECQ and the MECQ going on right now, and the restaurants can't open, they're closing down one after the other. So even if the virus went away tomorrow, you're going to have to rebuild the businesses in order to get the people back to work, because right now there's not going to be enough jobs. I mean, I'm not an expert in Philippine economy, but there are millions of people that are jobless now, and food prices are going up. So the national debt is expanding daily. So the vaccine is a big issue. They got to get this vaccine into people's arms, and for this MECQ to be able to end.
Yeah, and I hope people will just, have their they should really be vaccinated, because that's the only way for now. But the problem is there's a lot of people who refuse to take vaccine.
I mean, the thing is that the government has made a lot of predictions. The GDP will bounce back to 6.5 in 2021. Now, at the time, that made sense, because if the virus had ended when it was supposed to, the GDP would probably most likely come back by 2021. But we're coming up on May right now, and we're not we haven't even gotten to the starting gate. Talk about the race. We haven't even started the race yet, because we can't get the race to a start. So how do they get to the starting gate in order to try and make up all this problems that they've had in the last year? And that last year could cost the Philippines 10 years. I read different things about the economy and when they think it's going to come back and how long it's going to take. The Philippines has had growth every year for the last couple of years, and now all of a sudden, the inflation rate is like what it was like 20 years ago. So I think they're going to have to rethink this plan. The plan that they had, it's sitting back and waiting for it to start, but it looks like it hasn't caught on yet. So they're going to have to rethink this in the idea that the pandemic is not going to end. Yeah,
I agree, because they cannot do anything right now, because it's, I don't know, I hope it will not really get that worse. Anyway, okay, that is sad, but let's go to Makati. How long do you think Filipino situation can recover on this pandemic? Many are hungry. Your opinion, please.
Yeah, let's just kind of switch gears here a little bit. They predicted that the Philippines will recover in 2 to 3 years if the pandemic ends. But in 2 years, what if the pandemic hasn't ended yet? And, OFWs. The amount of money that was, the Philippine relies on that. The Philippine economy relies on OFWs. And that was chopped like a tree in the last year. And getting those OFWs back to work, we just can't predict on how that's going to turn out. Is there going to be a wave in Japan, a wave in Korea, a wave in Europe? We don't know what's going to come about in the next year. And tourism, if they don't get tourism back into the Philippines, that's a huge dent in the economy. And as the jobs do not come back, and the price of chicken and the price of rice and the price of pork goes up and up and up and up, how is it going to work? How's the math going to come together? The government is out of money. Their national debt is ballooning. It's ballooning through the roof. I'm not going to go into the numbers now, because it gets kind of boring when you start going into that. But the fact that what she said was, are people going to go hungry? If you're going to predict something, that's the first thing that I would predict is food. They've got to sustain the price of food, because if people don't have any money, if there's no job and the food prices are going up, savings are going to start to disappear soon. Yeah,
it's happening right now. That's why there's so many things. I'm sure you heard about this community pantry thing. So, and you can see people lining up for food. and it might not be that safe because there will be transmission. I mean, because if you are gathering people in one place, so that's kind of dangerous. So
yeah, the community
I
pantry,
don't know what
that
to
is, that's something I'm sure is going to come up in our conversations in the next couple of weeks, because that's going to be something that's going to be really important to the Philippines.
Yeah. All right. Okay. There's one from Inday of Dumaguete. Wow, look at this. How many friends and relatives do you know died and survived COVID-19?
Well, yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people that have survived. I survived. You survived. I mean, well, you didn't get it, but I mean, a lot of my friends have had it, and they've all survived. Now, I know people who know people and people who have relatives that did not survive. As a lot of people know, my mother got COVID and she did not survive, and she was in probably the best hospital that we could have possibly put her in. And I was in that hospital in the ICU for 2 weeks. And while I was in the ICU, I watched everybody die in that ICU. And it's not because that it wasn't a good hospital. Actually, we were in one of the best hospitals that you could be in. It was just, there's nothing to do. Once they get to a point, it doesn't matter how much money you have or where you come from or who you are, you can't survive on the technology that they have now. Now, the technology is a little better now than it was in October of 2020, but not that much. And obviously, people are dying. People are dying, people are dying in the Philippines. So, it's been, one of those things where, we look back and say, geez, I think we could have done something differently. We could have, if we had done this, if we had done that. And sure, it's easy to go back and look back and say, you know what, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah, we probably could have. We could have done this and we could have done that. And maybe not as many people would have died. But how would we have known?
Yeah. Because, in the first place, nobody knows what this COVID is way last year. Okay, nobody know what to do. So people are thinking of, they thought of doing this, doing that, and so but a lot of things didn't work. A lot of the people died. I have friends who died of COVID, and up to now, I have my associate who are, having COVID right now, and I just pray that they will not be hospitalized, because the moment they need to be hospitalized, I know there's no place in the hospital. And I'm glad that that's why I always distance myself from a lot of people because of that, without them knowing that I'm trying to be careful myself. And I think that's the basic thing that we can do right now. So because we don't know, if you have it, sometimes you panic, you don't know what to do. Though now you and I probably know what we should do, right? But then what about other people?
Yeah,
and that is
when you watch television and it shows all these people dying, and then you have people saying, well, it's only 5%, but 5% is 5%, and it's possible, and it's not it's not only related to people over 75. There are young people that get it and young people that die as well.
Yeah.
And okay, we're wearing masks and we're wearing face shields and we're locking down, but it's still going on. It's still the virus is still going on, and I'm talking to my friends and they're saying, my friends' parents, they both have COVID now, and they're both in their late 70s, and everybody's worried. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, you should be. And there was a woman that got COVID who's a friend of mine. Somebody that they knew, and they got COVID and they didn't go to the hospital because they didn't want to go to the hospital because there's a lot of people in the hospital, and then they end up dying at home. And so, it's one of the things I don't know exactly how, when you ask a question, how many friends or how many people, in the United States, it got to be the point where it wasn't how many people do you know got COVID. It's like, do you know anybody that had COVID? Or how many people do you know that died of it? And it's just such a hard thing to cope with, and we were all freaked out, and now we're a year into it, and now it's become commonplace, and that's something that I hope doesn't happen. That it just becomes, somebody else died. That shouldn't be commonplace. That should still be like, oh my goodness, somebody died.
Yeah. That is really heartbreaking, especially if, your friends or relatives got COVID. So, because you cannot go to them, you cannot visit them because, we're all restricted, and there's so many sad story that you hear every day. And we just hope that we can always be positive because this is the way to fight COVID, being positive and staying safe.
Yeah.
All right, let's go now to Edilson 1. Okay. Prices of ivermectin is going up and people are being fooled by sales talk. Isn't this crazy and desperate? What can you advise?
All right. Well, okay. The news has not changed much in the last few weeks. And we've been talking about this almost every week. We're following the story. And some doctors are saying this is the miracle cure. However, there's no proof yet that it is a miracle cure. Like I said, you can give somebody aspirin for COVID and they'll get better. But if you didn't give them the aspirin, they may have gotten better anyway. It's all I can say about that. Now, this all started in Australia, where they discovered that they could stop the replication of SARS-2. And SARS-2 is where COVID-19 comes from. But you have to give and I'll say this again, you have to give a huge dose of ivermectin in order for this to happen. And so they weren't sure that the amount that they would have to give somebody would be safe. And so that's why the FDA and the CDC and the WHO have said not recommended that this drug, just like they didn't recommend the other drug that hydrochloroquine, because it could work on some people, and maybe if you didn't give it to them, maybe it would have worked. They just can't say that somebody survived because you gave them this drug, because they haven't been able to test it yet. We went over the tests that they did have. They did have a test that they did, a randomized study, and we talked about it here, and it just didn't show yet that there's any proof that this ivermectin is going to change anything a lot if you take it. And people are saying, well, just take it. Take it. I mean, it's not going to hurt you. Well, it depends. It depends on who you are. And are you taking blood thinners? And are you taking heart medicine? And are you taking medicine for something else? They don't know how it's going to react to it. So, it's a preventative, it's preventative about stopping the replication. So if you already have COVID-19 and you're dying and you think, oh my goodness, give me some ivermectin, I don't think it's going to help. Because it's a parasite drug. It's a drug mostly given to animals to cure parasites, and they have a topical version of it for humans. So I think that you should wait before taking this drug, because everybody who is an expert says that you should. And I know these days we don't believe our experts anymore like we used to. We used to believe the CDC and we used to believe the FDA. And now we've all of a sudden stopped believing in them. Why? What's the reason why? And everybody says, because they're trying to get money and they're trying to do... Okay, all right, well... but, we've always believed them before. And, the WHO has always been a good catalyst for telling us what to do. Mm-hmm. So, that's my 2 cents.
For me, because this is the latest that I heard, that the president even gave a go signal. Okay, let's see it. Let's try that. So now the Department of Science and Technology are trying to do a clinical trial on that, but it will take 6 to 8 months.
I know,
before they know that if it's gonna work. But they will need to test for human, because the problem now is people don't know, because there's some are panicking about this. They buy from different sources without knowing that they're buying, because they're doing the retail. So they don't know if this one is for human or for animals. So that is that part. There's a lot of ivermectin in the market. So we don't know which is for human and animals. So
and
better not buy everything.
Before the pandemic, the reason for having ivermectin in Philippines was for animals.
Yes.
Before. They didn't give it to humans before. So if you're finding a pill here in the Philippines, it would have had to have been shipped in recently, because most of the ivermectin that they had in the Philippines before, it wasn't used in humans before, it was used in animals. The human form is actually like a cream, I think, that you put on. So I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I'm just saying that, yeah, if you're worried that it's not going to be the real one that they designed for humans, then you probably might be right.
Okay, so for me, just be careful what you buy. Let's go to Athena of Manila. What is the best idea for Filipino to survive? What do you think?
Life is not normal now. It's not. This is not normal now. What is normal now? This is normal now. I mean, wearing a mask and a face shield and staying at home all the time, deciding, am I going to spend my money on a pair of shoes, or am I going to spend my money on noodles? Because who knows what's going to happen in the next month? Am I going to go out and rent, a 30,000 peso a month apartment, or should I stay in my place now where I'm only paying 10? Because I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have a job next month. And the same thing with these people that own these restaurants. So should I open my restaurant and hire 10 people, because next week they may start ECQ again? So it's a lot of, right now it's a lot of thinking ahead and thinking in terms of community. You can't survive this thing by yourself, or most people can't. I mean, some people can, I know, but a lot of people, they need the idea of community. I mean, with all these lockdowns and curfews, people are starting to rely on their neighbors. And, I live in a village in Cebu, and in that village, people are cooking food. Different houses are cooking food, and then they'll sell it for a really cheap price to their neighbor. And they have a little thing on Messenger, a little group, and you can go on and see who cooked what. And you can go to their house, because otherwise you got to go to the grocery store. That means you got to get to the grocery store, and the grocery store prices are pretty not great right now. And so the fact that people are helping each other out and cooking food and selling stuff at a cheap price in the neighborhood, so people don't have to leave, I think is how that we're going to survive this thing.
Well, yeah, it's a different situation right now. Okay, but of course here in Metro Manila, what people does is, okay, if they don't cook at home, they just order. They just do online ordering. But then but those are not cheap. Ordering, from one restaurant or another, it's not cheap actually. And how can you survive doing that for a long time unless you are a really rich person that you cannot, right? But most people are not.
You can sit there and study Food Panda and figure out how to get the good deal here and use the coupon there and get the redemption thing there and put it all together for one meal, and you get one thing cheap. But other than that, if you do this all the time, it gets to be very expensive. And we're getting to the point where food is becoming an issue, and rent. And, these landlords eventually are going to start kicking people out into the street. And these are people that are not street people. These are well-to-do people that just don't have any money because they didn't plan. Because who would have thought that you would not have a job after a year, that your company would still not be in business, or that, after a year, your company just gave up and closed down, and now you got to find another job. But so are 4 million other people trying to find a job too. So this is, I read a story recently about these people that pick through dumpsters, and they go and they pick through dumpsters, and then they trade. They take what they find in the dumpster and they go in and they trade it for whatever. And there's a whole society of this that goes on. But with the lockdowns, these people have not been able to go and do this. And this is a part of the Philippine society. And so they're trying to figure out how to help these people and let them out at night so they can go out at night and scrounge around and find something that they can trade the next day. And so they're trying to come up with ways of giving them masks because they didn't have any masks to wear. And it's these kind of things. Whereas, this whole thing about, we do things as one. Yeah, that's the way you're going to get through this. People are going to have to work together. I mean, okay, well, yeah, we're supposed to help the poor, but right now I'm poor. I wasn't poor last year, but now I'm poor. Who's going to help me? And so that's why I said, this people working together as a community is going to have to happen because this is life. People go, when's it going to end? It's not going to end. This is the life now. And we have to get used to living this way now.
Yeah. And, for those people who has money, like I said before, if you can help. Because you know what? It's better to help even on your own little way than letting that people die of COVID. Why COVID? Because, they go out to look for something to do. So for them to eat. Right? I mean, looking for a job, but going out is not that safe. So rather, do something at home if you can do something at home and stay safe all the time because it's hard to beat this virus because we are not seeing virus at all, not at all.
Yeah,
so what will you do?
Yeah, I mean, if you are home all the time and eventually the food's going to run out and the money's going to run out. And what are you going to do when the food and money is going to run out? You're going to leave. You're going to go outside and try and figure out how to survive. And going out and trying to figure out how to survive, you're going to get sick. And you're going to bring that sickness home and you're going to give it to everybody in your house.
Yes.
And here we go. And nobody is going to get tested and nobody is going to get the proper medical treatment. And before you know it, the whole neighborhood is going to have it. And nobody's going to know because nobody's going to get tested. And so, here's where the Philippines turns into India. And this is what we're trying to avoid right now. You don't want all the good work that the Philippines did last year in holding this pandemic back to go to waste. Like, they did all this work and now we come to 2021 and now it's worse than it was in 2020 because of what's happening. Because, like I said, if you're thinking about what you're going to eat, the fact that you're worried about the coronavirus that priority is going to drop. People aren't worried about, dying from COVID. They're worried about dying from not having enough to eat. So that's the thing that you have to worry about right now. And, these community food programs, these programs where they give out, rice and things like that. This is the time where we need to look ahead and think, okay, you got this much money left. You need to make sure that that's going to last you for not another month, but another couple of months. Because, like I said, we don't know if there's going to be a job 2 months from now or 3 months from now. We can't tell. We can't tell.
The other thing that worries me also is that, it's not only the food. The utilities.
Yeah.
Utilities, if you're renting. So what will happen? You don't have a job. I don't know what to say about this. And this is really very, very tough for a lot of us.
I mean, eventually Meralco is going to have to start turning off power. Because enough people stop paying the bills, eventually they're going to have to start turning it off. And, the internet is going to... and. That's something really bad too, is like we can't lose the internet. We can't lose power, but we can't lose the internet. And there's just so many parts to this. And how many people have not paid their rent in 3 months or 4 months? And what are the landlords supposed to do? How long can they go on before they're going to have to start removing people and putting them into the street?
Yeah, and that will be the day. I mean, that will... Oh my God! I don't know what's going to happen if that, and I hope it will not happen. And I hope all the landlords, all these people. So how do we do it? How are we going to survive? Okay, number one for me. Okay, let's pray, and see what. I don't know what to do after this. If I don't get a job, if I don't have business, so what will happen to people?
Yeah.
We can still survive, Eric. I mean, we are old enough to find ways, right? But then what about the other people?
You know, what I worry about are the people that have the 30,000 peso a month rent and they need to leave because they haven't been able to pay their rent in 3 months. But then you have to rent another place. Let's say you want to go rent a place that's 10,000, but you don't have any money now. So you have the first month, the last month, and it takes a lot of money to move to another place. And I just am so worried that in the next couple of months, we're going to see more and more people out on the street that shouldn't be there, that have no experience living on the street, because literally they're just running out of money. And I think that's what the government needs to really start focusing on, because it looks like the trend if the pandemic will not end and we will continue with these ECQs and MECQs, these lockdowns and so forth, then it's never going to end.
Yeah, we'll just hope and pray that, we can do something for ourselves and for other people.
Well,
and I know the government is thinking.
I know. My heart goes out to the government. But speaking of things that need to end, right now we need to end the show. But for me, Eric LeCain here on DZRJ and RJ TV, and Lolly Tolentino, everybody, be safe out there. Wear your mask and your face shield. We're going to have to work together. As they say, Philippine as one is going to have to recover from this. And so we just pray and hope that the next couple of months, things start to level out a little bit and we start to get better.
Yeah.
So for now, here on the World News Jam on DZRJ, I'm Eric LeCain with Lolly Tolentino. We will see everybody next week, and be safe out there.